With March of the Machines only a few weeks away, of course, spoilers are starting to appear, and to some players, they seem incredibly broken. Today, we're gonna talk about Ren the Realmbreaker. How broken is this card? We are here to pass judgment on Ren the Realmbreaker. That's what we're here to talk about today. Welcome back, everyone. MTG Moxman here. Thanks again for hanging out with me on the channel. March of the Machines coming up. Pretty exciting. It's always a new set. Gets the blood pumping. Thinking about new cards, ideas, and integration between existing cards. Who doesn't like the idea of finding a way to break a card? To make it that much better, to make it that much more playable. And every time Wizards of the Coast gives us a card with multiple functions and abilities, a lot of players will either think, wow, this card's really busted. Wow, I can make a lot of money on this card. I'm going to spec and make a fortune and I'm going to be rich. Or they think, this just ruined a format. This destroyed my idea of what I thought this format was going to be about, right? Because people think it kind of can tilt things one way or the other. But when you look at a card like this, how powerful is it really? There's so many different ways of gauging a card's power level based on when you plan on casting it, the innate abilities of a card, and the functionality going forward based on other decks around it. So first, let's get past this. Let's look at the card. So here we have Ren the Realmbreaker, and yeah, I zoomed in on the section we're going to be looking at. It is 2 green plus 1 generic for Legendary Planeswalker Ren. By the way, the symbol for March of the Machines is not my favorite. I don't know, it seems like that should be more of a Dungeons and Dragons type theme, kind of look with a sword, but it's fine. Has a static ability. Lands you control have tap to add 1 mana of any color. Very cool, and it kind of follows along the themes of what the World Tree did beforehand. So I like the kind of story arc that this kind of takes. Now, if you're a big lore person, you should probably check out stuff from MTG Historian. I am sure that boy is going to be slamming out some great lore on this stuff, so keep your eyes out for that stuff. His Fantasy Geographic channel has all kinds of amazing lore. Now, the other ability here is +1. Up to 1 target land you control becomes a 3/3 elemental creature with vigilance, hexproof, and haste until your next turn. It's still a land. That does seem incredibly powerful, but just hold on a sec, we're still going through these. -2, mill 3 cards. You may put a permanent card from among the milled cards into your hand. Doesn't say any card, it just says of the 3 ones you've milled. That can be good depending on what you're trying to do with your deck. We can get to that later. And of course, the -7, you get an emblem with, you may play land and permanent cards from your graveyard. So in some ways, this is kind of like going back to Yawgmoth's Will on the reserve list, okay? Except for Yawgmoth was exiled, and this emblem is still going to be here. Not to mention permanent spells will still be around, so even if somebody wipes them out, they're still going to be available. They're still going to be a tangible thing you can play. So when you look at the card on the surface, I got to admit, it looks very powerful. It's very awe-inspiring. When you see the 3 casting costs, it does all these crazy things. But now think of every other card out there that could deal with this. Think of all the removal spells, all the other creature cards, and look what the card does. A lot of people like to look at a card like this and say, can it defend itself? Most people would think right away, hey, on turn 1, as soon as this guy gets out, you can activate his +1 ability. Yeah, you can, but you notice if you played this on turn 3 and your lands are all tapped when you played it, it doesn't untap the land. The land still stays tapped, so it doesn't do anything that first turn. He's got to get to round 2. The mill 3 cards, it doesn't let you take any permanent card, just one of the 3 milled cards. And the 7 emblem, if you can get the Realmbreaker that high, it could be a very powerful card, but there are so many ways of removing graveyards nowadays that this is not an awe-inspiring card. And in my opinion, he doesn't look too amazingly broken on the surface. He looks like a decent, fun card to play in Standard. People will try to fit him into a Commander deck. And going forward, he's probably going to be, what, 30, 40 bucks on pre-sale. And I bet you he drops down to 15, 20 bucks or less as time goes along. But when you start looking at other cards, okay, think of Strip Mine. Strip Mine here says, sacrifice Strip Mine, destroy a target land. So the idea of being able to bring back lands, So if that emblem gets out there that every turn you could bring back a strip mine and wipe out somebody's land, that's interesting, right? But we've seen this, of course, in other recursion decks. It's not that unusual. Well, how about Otawara the Soaring City? How about the lands from Kamigawa Neon Dynasty that say, hey, discard Otawara Soaring City, return target artifact, creature, enchantment, or planeswalker to its owner's hand? Well, that's a little more interesting, right? Because if this card can unsummon your stuff or the opponent's stuff and it gets into that pile, but you get the emblem off, that could be kind of a more unique card to have around. Not to mention that cards like Otawara could now tap for any color mana if you needed to put it into play. Any land card will do because it lets lands tap for any color. That stuff starts getting a little more tricky and fun for me. Now, when we look at this card, which of course is from Phyrexia, All Will Be One, the Conduit of Worlds, everyone kind of liked the idea of this card, but the card itself didn't seem to have a home yet. Well, this makes more sense when you look at Ren the Realmbreaker, right? 2 green, 2 other. You may play lands from your graveyard. Nice. So, just like the static ability, tap for any mana, but now you can bring those lands back. But look at the second ability. Tap, choose target non-land permanent card in your graveyard. If you haven't cast a spell this turn, you may cast that card. If you do, you can't cast additional spells, activate as a sorcery. So even if somebody kills Ren the Realmbreaker, the Conduit of Worlds allows you to go back and get Ren. You can go back into your graveyard and cast Ren again. So unless they have a permanent solution to exile Ren from the battlefield, or to exile your graveyard, Conduit of Worlds will allow you to keep going back and recasting him. So in a standard format, this could be a combination players do tend to see. It's something to keep in mind if you're looking at cards like this. Now, going back and looking at the World Tree. Of course, this is from Kaldheim, right? And Vorinclex stole the seed and took it with him. Yeah. Tap to add a green to your mana pool, comes into play tap. But as long as you control 6 or more lands you control have tap to add any color. Great! This again, this ability, this idea really stacks nicely with Ren. But if you use multiples of this, if you're using all these different lands, not to mention Yavimaya, Cradle of Growth, or using Urborg, Tomb of Yawgmoth, you start getting a real idea of the mana base abilities to start linchpinning these things together to make a true 5-color deck with so many different ways of tapping into your mana source that you can't be ignored. Players will have to recognize it. Now, of course, don't forget the original Renin 6, who could also be paired up in a commander deck. Yes, it'd be a red-green, but there's so many ways of pairing these off now. And, I mean, look at the card. Returning land cards again. Doing 1 damage and getting an emblem that instants and sorceries have retrace. Man, guys, this stuff could be totally crazy if you get multiple emblems to trigger off on a card like this. And, of course, don't forget reserve list cards. Things like Lake of the Dead. Lake of the Dead here says that you can sacrifice a swamp to add 4 black mana to your mana pool. But what happens if I can sack a swamp and find a way to untap this land again, which isn't that hard, and then go ahead and replay another land and sack it again? Because now that swamp is in my graveyard, I can use any of these Ren, Crucible World type abilities, and multiple ways of doing it now, of being able to access that land again and being able to untap Lake of the Dead again. Guys, crazy abilities that can be found in cards like this, which is why these are a few touching points on the card. But every single one of these requires a combination of cards. It's not a one of, this is a broken combo, you got to deal with it. It will take a few turns to start putting the pieces of your puzzle together to make these cards work in harmony, which means it's not broken. In my opinion, it is a good card. It is not a powerful card. It is not a broken style card that can be a game-ending effect. It will take multiple pieces of the jigsaw puzzle fitted together to play this card out in a way that makes it seem like it's an unstoppable juggernaut of a card, like it's a realm breaker. So when you think about a card like this and you're thinking about pre-ordering at $30-40, I would say no, skip it. Unless you're a player who has to have it right away, this card will dip in value as players try to use it in the standard format, trying to blend it into commander decks, and you will see it slowly wane down until it has some playability. It has a few decks it gets played in for fun, but competitively, since it can't defend itself, it doesn't make a creature right away that is permanent as a blocker. It does go up to 5, which is nice, but on that turn 1, if an opponent has a 2-3 or a 3-4 creature, you're going to be knocking Ren down right away. And since the creature he makes doesn't stay, since of course that little 3/3 land doesn't get to stick around, that means he's always defenseless unless you have another blocker out there. These are just little counterpoints that show you the card is good but not broken. Now, the fact his land that he creates has the hexproof ability, that's going to make him a bit of a pain to deal with if he does get that land ability going and makes the 3/3 creature till end of turn. But that's just one 3/3 creature, and if you're in some kind of competitive deck, you better have ways of answering things like that anyway. So in this case, I'm going to give this card probably a solid 6.5, 7 out of 10. It's going to be a fun card. And of course, players are going to want to experiment with it and have a good time, but I would not invest in the pre-release pricing on this card. I think it's a card that will get opened quite a bit. I think March of the Machine is going to be a very popular set, and that means the price of this card, it'll dip over time. Give it like a 90 days, 120 days. See how the player base experiments with it. You're not really going to lose anything by waiting. If the price holds high past the pre-release pricing, that just justifies the cost. And of course, if it sinks, you saved a few bucks in the process of waiting, unless you happen to get one in a pack. An amazing time. And remember, every time we see new sets come out, new cards like this do come around. They're great to take a look at and hack away with and see if you can brew with it in a fun way. But chances are, there's always an answer to every card. And with games being over by turn 5 and 6 in a lot of cases in Standard, he's not going to see that much of a powerful type of interaction play before he would get eliminated. So keep that stuff in mind. I think cards like this in EDH, maybe as a supplemental card, I don't see it as a main driving force, but another piece of a connective puzzle for a bigger deck construction. Thanks a lot, guys, for tuning in. Thanks for hanging out with the Moxman and allowing me to entertain you today. I look forward to seeing you guys tomorrow in another video. And of course, if you enjoyed today's content, don't forget to give this video a thumbs up and a like. And of course, hit that subscribe button if you're new to my channel. Have a great day, everyone. We'll see you tomorrow. To my awesome patrons, don't forget, this weekend Sunday live stream is the monthly giveaway. I can't wait to see which patron or YouTube member wins all those reserve list cards. I'll see you guys Sunday on the live stream and, of course, the comment section. You have those days where everything is horrible. Welcome back to the end. And you're so frustrated, but you know what? That's when you just gotta, smile and say, tomorrow is gonna be a better day. It just has to be, because it can't get any worse. I mean, we all know things can get worse, but you got to be a positive Petey, not a negative Nelly. Have a great day, everyone. We'll see you tomorrow.